James watched in horror as three men with knives circled Jessica and 8-year-old Olivia in the parking lot. The 14-year-old homeless boy knew Lucas was inside the clubhouse. His family was seconds from bleeding out on the asphalt. No phone, no help coming, just him. James grabbed a loose chain from the ground, his hands trembling as the lead attacker raised his blade toward Olivia's throat. What happened next would bring 700 Hell's Angels to their knees outside a hospital room. But first, James had to make an impossible choice: save the child or the mother. He had 3 seconds to decide. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 10,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Please subscribe to Hell's Angels Tales and comment where you are watching from. Let's keep breathing life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Enjoy the story. The knife caught the streetlight first, 3 inches of steel glinting under the Waffle House parking lot neon at 12:17 a.m. James saw it from his cardboard shelter behind the dumpster, saw the tall man grab the woman's arm, while the other two circled like wolves cornering prey. The little girl, maybe 6 years old, blonde pigtails, pink pajamas under her jacket, screamed for her mother with the kind of terror that burrows into your bones and never leaves. James had been surviving on Atlanta streets for 8 months. 243 days of counting hours until sunrise, of fighting for scraps, of making himself invisible to the predators who owned the night. He'd learned one rule above all others: don't get involved. Mind your business. Keep your head down. Stay invisible. Survival meant swallowing your humanity piece by piece until nothing remained but the animal instinct to see another dawn. He'd watched 3 muggings from these same shadows, 2 beatings that left men unconscious in pools of their own blood. 1 assault he still heard in nightmares when sleep finally came. Each time, he'd pressed himself deeper into the darkness, hands clamped over his mouth to muffle his breathing, waiting for the violence to pass like a storm he couldn't control. Getting involved meant getting hurt. Getting hurt meant dying alone in some hospital hallway with no name and no one to claim your body. But this little girl's screams sounded exactly like his sister's voice from the nightmares, the sister who'd never existed, who haunted him anyway with what-ifs and could-have-beens. His mother used to say he would have been a good big brother before the pills took over, before grief consumed her like fire eating through paper. Now his mother was somewhere in this same city chasing her next fix, and James was watching a real little girl about to learn that the world devours innocence without hesitation. The woman, mid-30s, dark hair falling loose from a ponytail, wearing an expensive leather jacket that marked her as someone's wife, someone important, clutched her daughter against her chest while the tallest attacker pressed his knife to her throat. Purse, keys, phone, now. His voice carried the flat effect of someone who'd done this before, someone who wouldn't hesitate to cut. The blade drew a thin line of blood along her neck, and the little girl's screams reached a pitch that shattered something inside James's chest. His hands were shaking. His entire body screamed at him to stay hidden, to survive, to remember that heroes die young and stupid on streets that don't remember their names. 8 months of survival instinct wired into his nervous system said run. Every lesson he'd learned about staying alive said this wasn't his problem. But his legs were moving before his brain caught up, his malnourished frame launching from behind the dumpster with all the desperate strength of someone who had absolutely nothing left to lose. Run! The word tore from his throat, raw, terrified, defiant. He crashed into the nearest attacker, a man twice his weight with tattoos crawling up his neck like diseased vines. They went down together, asphalt tearing skin from James's palms, tiny stones embedding in his flesh. The man's elbow drove into his ribs with enough force to crack bone. James felt something give way inside his chest, heard the snap, tasted blood. The woman was screaming, not for herself anymore, but for him, for the stupid homeless kid throwing himself into a fight he couldn't win. She grabbed her daughter and ran toward the restaurant entrance, her phone already pressed to her ear, words tumbling out in panicked gasps. Lucas. Oh God, Lucas, someone's being stabbed. There's a kid. He's just a kid. The first knife found his shoulder before he saw it coming. White-hot pain exploded through his left side, so intense his vision whited out completely. He couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The world reduced to agony, and the warm wetness spreading down his arm. He heard himself scream, a sound he didn't recognize, animal and desperate. The tattooed man shoved him off, James's body hitting the pavement like discarded trash. Marcus said no witnesses, especially not some homeless punk playing hero. The second attacker kicked James in the stomach, driving what little air remained from his lungs. Ribs that were already cracked broke completely. The third man grabbed James by his filthy jacket, hauling him up and slamming him against a car door hard enough to spiderweb the window glass. James's head bounced off metal. Stars exploded across his vision. Blood ran into his eyes from a gash somewhere in his scalp. You picked the wrong fight, street rat. The knife came up again, aimed for his stomach, and James knew with crystal clarity that he was about to die in a Waffle House parking lot at 14 years old. Maybe that was okay. Maybe dying to save a little girl was better than freezing to death alone behind a dumpster in February. At least he'd done something good. At least he'd mattered one last time. His fingers found broken glass near the tire, the same bottle he'd been planning to turn in tomorrow morning for 5 cents, enough for a gas station coffee if he was lucky. He swung it with every ounce of strength his body could produce, glass shattering against the attacker's face in an explosion of green shards and blood. The man screamed, stumbling backward, hands clutching his ruined cheek. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Someone inside the restaurant must have called 911. The attackers exchanged glances, quick, professional, men who knew when to cut their losses. Marcus ain't paying us enough for this. They ran, their footsteps echoing off buildings as they disappeared into Atlanta's maze of alleys, leaving James crumpled on blood-slicked asphalt. He tried to stand, his legs folded like paper. The parking lot tilted sideways, neon lights smearing into abstract art. The asphalt felt cold against his cheek despite the summer humidity, and there was so much blood, his blood, darker than he'd imagined, spreading in a pool that reflected the Waffle House sign above. Red and yellow lights dancing in crimson. Subscribe and comment where you're watching from. What happens next will shatter your heart into pieces. The woman stumbled back to him, her daughter still clutching her neck, both of them crying. Her hands pressed against his wounds, trying to stop the bleeding, but the blood kept coming. Too much blood for such a small body to lose. Her hands were shaking as badly as his were. Stay with me, sweetheart. Please stay with me. Help is coming. You're so brave. What's your name? Tell me your name. James tried to answer. Tried to tell her his name was James, and he'd been homeless for 8 months, and he was sorry for getting blood on her expensive jacket, and could she maybe tell his mother he tried to be good, that he tried. But the words drowned in the copper taste flooding his mouth. His lungs wouldn't work right. Each breath came wet and rattling. The little girl was crying, saying, "Mommy, is he dying? Mommy, please don't let him die." Her voice sounded exactly like the sister he'd never had, the family he'd lost, the life that disappeared when his father died and his mother chose pills over her son. The last thing James saw before darkness swallowed him whole was the little girl's face, terrified but alive, safe because he'd chosen one moment of courage over 8 months of survival. If this was dying, at least he was dying human instead of the animal the streets had tried to make him. Lucas arrived 3 minutes later. 3 minutes that felt like 3 lifetimes. His Harley screamed into the parking lot followed by 6 other motorcycles, their engines splitting the night with mechanical thunder that shook car windows and set off alarms. He'd been at the clubhouse 12 miles away when Jessica's call came through, her voice hysterical, breaking on every word, saying someone saved them, that a boy was dying for them, that there was so much blood. He'd broken every traffic law getting there, his Harley pushing 90 through red lights and stop signs, his brothers right behind him in tight formation. But nothing prepared him for what he found. Jessica kneeling in blood that wasn't hers, holding a kid who looked more skeleton than human, all sharp angles and hollow cheeks carved by months of starvation. The boy's face was gray, lips blue, eyes rolled back. The ambulance was already there, paramedics working frantically. IVs, oxygen mask, chest compressions. Their voices tight with urgency that meant we're losing him. Massive blood loss, BP dropping, collapsed lung, possible liver laceration, suspected internal bleeding. We need to move now. Lucas grabbed the nearest paramedic's shoulder hard enough to bruise. What hospital? Grady Memorial. Sir, you need to step back. What are his chances? Lucas's voice came out savage, raw with something that felt like his chest splitting open. The paramedic's face told him everything. Sir, you need to understand. He's lost over 40% of his blood volume. The next hour is critical. If you know this kid's family, I don't want to hear his chances. Lucas's hands were shaking. I want to hear he's going to make it. He turned to his brothers, his face carved from stone and fury and something that looked like grief. Make the call. Everyone. Every charter within 300 miles. Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, the Carolinas. I don't care if they're sleeping or working or in church. This kid saved my family. His voice broke completely, tears cutting through the rage. We're going to save him. The call went out at 12:47 a.m. Kids saved the president's family. Critical condition at Grady. All hands. Lucas followed the ambulance, his Harley pushing the limits of what metal and rubber could endure, while behind him the message spread like wildfire through every Hell's Angels charter in the Southeast. At Grady Memorial, Lucas paced the surgical waiting room while Jessica sat covered in the boy's blood, her hands still shaking, unable to stop crying. Olivia was asleep in her lap, mercifully unaware of how close they'd come to dying, how close their savior was to death right now. 2 hours became 3. 3 became 4. Dawn broke over Atlanta, painting the sky in shades of gray and gold. By 6 a.m., the hospital parking lot was filling with motorcycles. Dozens at first, then hundreds. An army of leather and chrome arriving in waves from 5 states. Bikers who dropped everything, left jobs, left beds, left families, because the call had gone out, because one of their own needed them, because a kid with nothing had given everything to protect their president's family. They stood in complete silence, a wall of brotherhood that stretched 3 city blocks. Hospital security didn't know whether to be terrified or moved to tears. These weren't the criminals the media portrayed. These were fathers and brothers, mechanics and veterans, men who understood loyalty and sacrifice in ways most people never would. When the surgeon finally emerged at 6:30 a.m., his scrubs stained dark red, every person in that corridor held their breath. Lucas's heart stopped beating. He's alive, the surgeon said, exhaustion making his words heavy. Barely. He's lost over 40% of his blood volume, has a collapsed lung, lacerations to his liver and spleen, 3 broken ribs, and the shoulder wound damaged major nerves. We've stabilized him for now, but the next 48 hours are critical. If he survives the night, he might have a chance. Lucas's knees almost gave out. Jessica caught his arm, steadying him. Can we see him? Not yet. He's in ICU. But I need to know, who is this kid? We have no medical history, no insurance, no emergency contacts, no identification. Someone needs to take legal responsibility. I will. The words came instantly, without thought. He's under my protection now. Whatever he needs, whatever it costs, I'm responsible. The surgeon nodded slowly, then pulled out a worn photograph sealed in a plastic evidence bag. We found this in his pocket. He was clutching it so tightly we had to pry his fingers open. Maybe it means something to you. Lucas took the photo with shaking hands. It showed a younger boy, maybe 7 or 8, gap-toothed smile, messy brown hair, standing between a man in a Hell's Angels vest and a smiling woman. Birthday cake on a table behind them. Balloons. Happiness frozen in time. The man's face punched Lucas in the chest with recognition, so fierce it stole his breath. No, it couldn't be. He flipped the photo over with trembling fingers, read the faded writing on the back and handwriting he recognized. James's 8th birthday. Ryan, Sarah, and our beautiful boy. The floor dropped out from under him. The world tilted sideways. Lucas couldn't breathe. Ryan. His brother Ryan, who died 4 years ago in New Orleans, who'd taken 3 bullets meant for Lucas, who'd whispered, "Promise me. Find them, protect them," with blood pooling on the warehouse floor. Lucas had searched for Ryan's wife and son after the funeral. Hired private investigators, used every connection the club had across 20 states, spent over $40,000 chasing ghosts. They'd vanished completely. Sarah and James, gone like they'd never existed. And now Ryan's son had been sleeping behind a dumpster 15 feet from where Lucas ate breakfast every Sunday morning. Had been starving on Atlanta's streets while Lucas searched everywhere else. Had thrown himself at armed men to save strangers. Had nearly died protecting the family of the man his father died for. Lucas walked to the window overlooking the parking lot, where over 500 bikers now stood in the early morning light, with more arriving every minute. The sun caught on chrome and leather, turning the parking lot into a sea of reflected light. His vision blurred with tears he couldn't stop, couldn't control. He grabbed the hospital's PA system microphone from the nurse's station, his voice carrying through the speaker system that reached the parking lot below. "Brothers." His voice cracked immediately. "The kid's name is James. He's 14 years old. He's been homeless for God knows how long, surviving on our streets while we ate warm meals and slept in warm beds." Tears streamed down his face. "And he's Ryan's son. He's my brother's boy. The brother who died protecting me 4 years ago." The roar that went up from 500 bikers shook the hospital windows. It rattled the walls. It echoed across downtown Atlanta like thunder. Grown men who'd seen combat, who'd buried brothers, who prided themselves on being hard, wept openly in that parking lot. They wept for a brave kid who had nothing but gave everything. They wept for Ryan's son who'd survived the streets only to nearly die saving others. They wept because sometimes the world shows you that heroism doesn't wear a badge or a cape. Sometimes it wears a threadbare jacket and hasn't eaten in 3 days. Lucas pressed his forehead against the window glass, his shoulders shaking with sobs he'd held back for 4 years. "I found him, Ryan," he whispered to a ghost only he could see. "I finally found him, and I swear on everything I am, I won't lose him again." But in the ICU 3 floors above, James's heart monitor began to spike erratically. Alarms started blaring. Doctors rushed into his room as his blood pressure dropped to critical levels. And on his bedside table, a second photograph fell from his belongings. One that would change everything Lucas thought he knew about Ryan's death, about James's disappearance, and about who had really been hunting this boy for the past 4 years. The surgeon's hand trembled as he clipped James's x-rays to the light board. Lucas had been staring at his brother's son through the ICU window for 3 hours, watching machines breathe for him, watching monitors track a heartbeat that kept threatening to stop. Now Dr. Patterson was pulling him into a private consultation room, and the expression on the man's face said this conversation would hurt worse than any knife wound. "Mr. Lucas, before we discuss James's current condition, there's something you need to see." Dr. Patterson activated the backlight, and James's skeleton appeared in stark black and white. "These are old fractures. Here, here, and here." His finger traced lines across ribs, a wrist, a collarbone, all healed improperly, suggesting they were never treated. This malnutrition pattern indicates chronic food insecurity spanning at least a year, possibly longer. And these marks, he pointed to shadow patterns along James's spine, are consistent with repeated blunt force trauma. Lucas's vision tunneled. "You're telling me someone beat him? Before the streets? Extensively? For months, maybe years?" Dr. Patterson's voice gentled. "This child has been surviving hell long before tonight. Whatever life he's escaping, he chose homelessness over going back to it." The words hit Lucas like Ryan's bullets had hit the warehouse floor 4 years ago. James hadn't just lost his father. Someone had brutalized Ryan's son while Lucas searched in all the wrong places, while he slept in a warm bed, while he failed the one promise that mattered. 4 years ago, New Orleans, the warehouse district at 3 a.m. Lucas could still smell the place, rotting fish, motor oil, the copper salt scent of blood. Ryan had called him that night, voice tight with urgency. "Brother, I need you. Alone. Don't tell anyone else." Lucas had ridden through hurricane rain to get there, his Harley hydroplaning on flooded streets, Because when Ryan called, you came. That's what brotherhood meant. He'd found Ryan in the warehouse office, surrounded by ledgers and computer printouts, his face carved from fury and betrayal. I found it. 6 years of it. Someone's been bleeding the club dry, siphoning money, cooking the books, setting up brothers to take falls for deals gone bad. Who? Lucas had demanded. Ryan's answer died in gunfire. The office door exploded inward. 5 men with automatic weapons, faces covered, professional execution squad. Ryan had shoved Lucas behind a steel desk, his body becoming a shield Lucas never asked for. 3 bullets, chest, stomach, throat. Ryan went down drowning in his own blood while Lucas returned fire, killing 2 attackers before the rest retreated into the night. Lucas had held his brother while he died. Ryan's hands had gripped Lucas's vest, blood bubbling from his lips with each word. Promise me. Find them. Sarah. James. Protect them. Promise me, brother. I promise. I swear on everything I am. Ryan's last breath rattled out at 3:47 a.m. Lucas had screamed until his throat bled, had held his brother's body until the police arrived, had buried him 3 days later in a cemetery outside Baton Rouge, where Spanish moss hung like grief from ancient trees. At the funeral, Sarah had been a ghost. Hollow-eyed, skeletal, already halfway gone to wherever pills and grief took people who couldn't survive loss. She'd looked at Lucas with accusation carved into every line of her face. He died for you. My husband died, and you're still here. Sarah, please, let me help. Ryan made me promise. Your promises killed him. She'd taken James's hand. The boy had been 10 years old, silent, eyes too old for his face, and walked away. 2 weeks later, their apartment was empty. No forwarding address. No trace. Vanished like they'd never existed. Lucas had spent 4 years searching, hired 6 private investigators, used every connection the Hells Angels had across 30 states, followed leads to Chicago, Miami, Denver, Seattle, always one step behind, always finding cold trails and empty apartments. He'd poured $43,000 and 4 years of sleepless nights into finding Ryan's family, and all along, James had been sleeping 15 feet from Lucas's Sunday breakfast table. The guilt was going to kill him, should kill him. Ryan had died protecting Lucas, and Lucas had failed to protect Ryan's son from whoever put those fractures in his bones, whoever turned him into something so desperate he'd choose Atlanta's streets over a roof and food. Present day, Grady Memorial Hospital, 7 a.m. Lucas walked out to the parking lot where 700 bikers now stood in the rising sun. 700 brothers from 5 states who dropped everything because the call went out. The sea of leather and patches stretched 3 city blocks, and more were arriving every hour. News helicopters circled overhead. Police had closed surrounding streets. The city had never seen anything like this. Lucas climbed onto the back of a pickup truck someone had positioned as a makeshift stage. 700 faces turned toward him. Scarred, tattooed, aged by miles and choices, but every single one present because loyalty meant something in a world that had forgotten the word. Brothers. His voice carried across the lot, amplified by the speaker system someone had rigged. Most of you knew Ryan, knew what kind of man he was, what kind of father. His voice cracked. His son has been homeless, starving, beaten, alone, while I searched everywhere except the one place he was. The silence was absolute. 700 men breathing as one. Ryan died protecting me, made me promise to find his family. I failed that promise for 4 years. But last night, Ryan's 14-year-old son threw himself at 3 armed men to save my wife and daughter. Took knives meant for them. Nearly died protecting the family of the man his father died for. Tears streamed down Lucas's face. He had nothing, was nothing to this world. But he had more honor in his bones than most men find in a lifetime. A roar went up from 700 throats. Grief and rage and solidarity mixed into something primal. He's in ICU now. Critical condition. And when, not if, but when, he wakes up, he's never going to be alone again. He's family. Our family. And I need you all to stand witness to a promise I'm making to my dead brother. James is under our protection. Anyone who hurt him, anyone who failed him, anyone who made him choose streets over safety, they answer to us. Like this if you believe in second chances. Subscribe before you miss the promise Lucas makes next. The response shook buildings. 700 bikers raised their right fists in unison, the Hell's Angels salute for brotherhood and blood. Some were crying. All were ready to go to war for a kid they'd never met, because he was Ryan's son, and Ryan had been one of them. Lucas climbed down, his legs shaking, and walked back into the hospital. Jessica met him at the ICU entrance, her face pale. "Lucas, something's wrong." His heart rate. The alarm screamed before she finished. Flat, endless, the sound of a heart giving up. Lucas ran, his boots echoing on linoleum, bursting through the ICU doors as doctors swarmed James's room. The monitor showed a flat line where a heartbeat should be. Clear, the defibrillator discharged. James's small body arched off the bed. Nothing. Again. Another shock. Another deadline. Lucas couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. This couldn't be happening. Not after everything. Not after finding him. Come on, kid. Fight. Please fight. The third shock hit. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then a beep. Another. A rhythm. Weak, irregular, but beating. James's eyes opened. Unfocused, dilated, but conscious. His cracked lips moved, struggling to form words around the breathing tube. The doctor leaned closer. "Don't try to talk. You're safe. You're—" But James's hand shot out, gripping the doctor's wrist with desperate strength. His eyes found Lucas through the window, locked on with an intensity that made Lucas's blood run cold. The doctor carefully removed the breathing tube. James's first words after coming back from death were 3 syllables that shattered everything. "I remember you." 3 words that made time stop. Lucas stood frozen outside the ICU window, his hand pressed against glass that suddenly felt like the only barrier between past and present colliding. James's eyes. Ryan's eyes, the same storm gray that had stared up at Lucas from a blood-soaked warehouse floor 4 years ago, locked onto him with an intensity that 14-year-olds shouldn't possess. Eyes that had seen too much, survived too much, remembered too much. Dr. Patterson moved to sedate him, syringe already in hand. But James's hand shot out with surprising strength for someone who'd just died 90 seconds ago. His fingers wrapped around the doctor's wrist, stopping him mid-motion. "No. I need." He coughed, the sound wet and painful, his whole body convulsing with the effort. Blood flecked his lips. "I need to talk to him. To Lucas. Now. Son, you just coded. Your heart stopped beating. You need rest, not." "I was there." James's voice came out broken, each word carved from something that had been festering in his chest for 4 years, poisoning him from the inside out. New Orleans. 4 years ago. The warehouse. September 14th. I was there when my father died. The world tilted sideways. Lucas's knees almost gave out. His hand slammed against the doorframe to keep himself upright. The fluorescent lights overhead suddenly felt too bright, the antiseptic smell too strong, everything too real and not real enough. Dr. Patterson looked between them, the biker whose face had gone gray, the boy whose eyes held secrets that weighed more than his malnourished body, and slowly nodded. 5 minutes. That's all I'm giving you. His vitals are unstable. He left, taking the nurses with him. Pulling the door closed with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. Suddenly Lucas was alone in a room with a dying boy who held secrets Lucas had been searching for since the night his brother's blood soaked through his vest and into his skin where it still lived, where it would always live. Lucas entered on legs that barely worked, each step feeling like walking through concrete. He pulled a chair to James's bedside, the metal legs scraping against linoleum too loud in the heavy silence. Up close, the resemblance to Ryan was devastating. Same jawline sharp enough to cut, same stubborn set to his mouth, same way he looked at you like he could see straight through lies into truth. Ryan had always known when Lucas was holding back. Apparently his son had inherited that gift. "What do you mean you were there?" Lucas's voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. The warehouse. September 14th, 4 years ago. 3:47 a.m. That's when my dad died. 3:47 exactly. I checked the clock on the wall while I watched him bleed out. James recited the details like they were carved into his bones with the same knife that had scarred his shoulder last night. You think my dad went alone? He brought me, told me to wait in the car, lock the doors, don't move until he came back. Said he needed to show you something important, something about the club's money being stolen. But I got scared when I heard yelling inside. Loud voices. My dad's voice, angry in a way I'd never heard before. Lucas's hands were shaking. He gripped the chair arms to steady them. I followed him inside through a side door that didn't latch right. I was small for 10, could slip through spaces adults couldn't. I followed the voices to the office. James's eyes went distant, seeing something for years past that still played behind his eyelids every night. I was hiding behind file cabinets when the shooting started. 5 men, automatic weapons. The sound, I'd never heard anything so loud. Like the world was ending in explosions. James, Lucas tried to speak, but his throat closed around the words. I saw everything. James's voice broke completely, for years of trauma spilling out like infected wound drainage. I saw my father push you behind that steel desk. Saw him use his body as a shield. Saw the bullets hit him, chest, stomach, throat. Saw the blood spray across papers and computers. Saw you shooting back. Saw 2 of them go down. Saw the others run. Tears spilled down his hollow cheeks, dripping onto the hospital gown. I saw you hold my father while he died. Heard him make you promise to find us, to protect us. Heard him say, "Promise me, brother," with blood bubbling out of his mouth. Jesus Christ. Lucas's vision blurred. His chest felt like it was caving in, ribs cracking under the weight of knowing Ryan's 10-year-old son had witnessed his father's execution. James, you weren't supposed to see that. You were supposed to be safe in the car. Ryan would never. I know what I was supposed to do. James's jaw set with Ryan's stubborn determination. But I didn't. I watched my father die saving you, and I couldn't do anything. I was 10 years old, hiding behind file cabinets like a coward while my dad bled out 15 feet away. You weren't a coward. You were a child in a war zone. My mom said you killed him. The words came out flat, emotionless, rehearsed from 4 years of repetition that had turned them into something he no longer questioned. When the police finally found me in that warehouse 4 hours later, still hiding, still too scared to move, they brought me home. She was already high. Pills, vodka, anything to make the pain stop. The police told her dad was dead, and she lost her mind. Started screaming that your club destroyed our family, that dad died because of you, that we had to disappear before you destroyed us too. The pieces were falling into place, each one a knife sliding between Lucas's ribs. She was running from me, from us, from all of you. James nodded, wincing as the movement pulled his stitches. She sold our house 3 weeks after the funeral. Sold our car, Dad's tools, his motorcycle, everything he left us except that one photograph I kept hidden. We moved 11 times in 2 years. Chicago, Detroit, Memphis, Birmingham, back to Chicago, then Louisville, then here. Always moving, always hiding. She'd get paranoid, say the Hells Angels were tracking us, watching us, that they'd kill us like they killed Dad. Lucas wanted to put his fist through the wall, through the window, through his own face for failing Ryan's son so completely. We were tracking you, but not to hurt you, to help you, to keep Ryan's promise. I know that now. James's voice dropped. But I was 10, 11, 12. I believed what my mom told me because she was all I had left. And the drugs got worse every year. She'd disappear for days, come back with different men, people who looked at me like, his voice cracked, and he couldn't finish. The fractures. Lucas's hands clenched into fists. The doctor showed me your x-rays. Old breaks that healed wrong. James nodded slowly, not meeting his eyes. Mom's boyfriend in Memphis. Frank. He was a mean drunk. I talked back once, told him to stop hitting her. He broke my wrist, 3 ribs. Told me next time he'd break my neck. His jaw tightened. Then there was another one in Birmingham. Derek. He was worse. Mom would apologize after, say she'd leave them, but the pills made her forget. Made her not care. Made her choose them over me every single time. Lucas felt something dark and violent rising in his chest. Where are they now? Frank. Derek. Where? Dead, probably. Overdoses. Men like that don't live long. James finally looked at Lucas, and the pain in those eyes was older than any 14-year-old should carry. 8 months ago in Atlanta, she sold my dad's Hell's Angels ring. The one he never took off, the one that meant everything to him, the one that had his road name engraved inside. She sold it for $200 to buy heroin from some dealer in a gas station parking lot. That's when I knew she was gone. The mom I remembered, the one who made pancakes on Sundays and sang off-key in the car, she died with Dad in that warehouse. What was left wasn't my mother anymore, just a ghost wearing her face. So you ran. I chose the streets. James's voice hardened with the decision he'd made at 13 years old. Figured dying clean and alone was better than dying dirty and used by her boyfriends. Better than watching her destroy herself one needle at a time. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 4 years of grief and failure and broken promises. Outside, 700 bikers stood vigil for a boy they didn't know was carrying his father's death in his bones, his mother's betrayal in his blood. The sun had fully risen now, painting the hospital walls gold through the windows. The parking lot last night, Lucas said slowly, pieces clicking together like a gun being loaded. My wife Jessica. My daughter. You recognize them. James's expression shifted, something guarded sliding into place behind his eyes. I recognized the jacket first. Your club's leather. The Hell's Angels patch. The Atlanta charter colors. I'd been watching your clubhouse for 3 weeks, learning faces, learning patterns. Lucas's blood ran cold. You were watching us? What? Because I needed to know. James's hands twisted the hospital sheet into knots. I needed to know if my mom was right. If you were the monsters she said you were. I followed you, your wife, your brothers. Watched you eat breakfast at that Waffle House every Sunday. Watched you with your daughter. How gentle you were with her. How you made her laugh. Started to think maybe my mom was wrong. Maybe the drugs had twisted everything she remembered. But you saved Jessica anyway. Even though you weren't sure. Because your little girl was screaming like I screamed inside when I watched my dad die. Because someone had to do what I couldn't do 4 years ago. Be brave when it mattered. His voice dropped to a whisper. And because I was tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of hating people I didn't know. Tired of surviving when my dad died protecting something he believed in. Like this video. Subscribe now. You won't believe what James reveals next about his father's killer. Lucas reached out, his scarred and tattooed hand covering James's broken one. Your father didn't die because of me. He died protecting me from someone who betrayed the club. Someone who was stealing from us, cooking the books, setting up brothers to take falls for deals gone bad. Ryan found proof, months of evidence, and whoever was behind it killed him before he could expose them. James went very still. His monitor started beeping faster. What? We never found who did it. Never got justice. The shooters were professionals, military training, tactical gear. We killed 2 that night. The other 3 vanished like ghosts. No leads, no evidence, no witnesses. Lucas's voice hardened with 4 years of frustration. But if you were there, if you saw something. I saw faces. James sat up despite his wounds, despite the monitor's screaming warnings, despite Dr. Patterson rushing back in. He waved the doctor off with desperate urgency. The men who shot my dad, they took their masks off after they thought everyone was dead. I was hiding behind those cabinets, hardly breathing, and they took off their masks to check the bodies. I saw their faces. I'd recognize them anywhere. Lucas's heart hammered against his ribs so hard he thought they might crack. For years searching for Ryan's killers, and the only witness had been hiding in plain sight, sleeping behind dumpsters while Lucas ate pancakes 15 feet away. James, this is critically important. Could you identify them if you saw photos? Describe them to a sketch artist? I already have identified one. James's eyes locked onto Lucas with an intensity that made the air feel thin, made the room feel smaller. One of them was outside, in your parking lot. I saw him through the ambulance window last night when they were loading me, right before I passed out. The floor dropped away. Lucas couldn't breathe. What did you say? 700 bikers standing out there right now, and one of them murdered my father 4 years ago." James's voice shook with rage and fear mixed together. "He's wearing your patches, Lucas. He's one of your brothers. He's been one of your brothers this whole time." Before Lucas could respond, before he could process what that meant, betrayal wearing the same colors, a killer standing vigil with men he'd deceived for years, a wolf hiding in wolf's clothing. James pulled something from under his pillow. A photograph, creased and stained and worn from being clutched too many times, hidden in his belongings through 8 months of street survival. "There's something else you need to see. Something I found 3 weeks ago that brought me to Atlanta. Why I was sleeping behind that specific Waffle House instead of any other place in the city." He handed Lucas the photo with shaking hands. The image showed Sarah, gaunt, aged beyond her 41 years, looking 60, sitting in a diner booth across from a man whose face made Lucas's blood run cold and hot simultaneously. The man wore a Hell's Angels vest, the Atlanta charter patch visible on his shoulder, VP rocker clearly displayed. And Lucas knew that face better than his own because he'd trusted it for 15 years, had called it brother, had cried on that man's shoulder at Ryan's funeral. It was Marcus, his vice president, Ryan's best friend since they were prospects together. The man who'd helped Lucas search for James for 4 years, who'd spent countless hours following false leads, who'd seemed as desperate as Lucas to find Ryan's family. James's voice cut through the silence like a blade through skin. "My mom didn't disappear because of grief. She didn't run from you because she thought you were dangerous." His eyes held Lucas's, unflinching, delivering truth like a death sentence. "Someone paid her to hide me. Someone who knew I witnessed my father's murder. Someone who's been watching me for 4 years, waiting to see if I'd remember enough to be dangerous. And 3 weeks ago, he found me in Chicago, gave my mom $5,000 and this address in Atlanta. Told her to bring me here, keep me close, keep me quiet." Lucas's world was ending. Everything he'd built, everyone he'd trusted. Those 3 men with knives last night. James's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "They weren't random muggers. They were looking for me. Your wife and daughter, they were in the wrong place. The attack was supposed to happen to me." The name sat in Lucas's mouth like poison, burning his throat, making it hard to breathe. His vice president for 6 years. Ryan's best friend since they were 20-year-old prospects getting their patches together in a ceremony Lucas had attended, had celebrated with whiskey and brotherhood and promises that apparently meant nothing. The man who'd stood at Ryan's funeral with tears streaming down his face, who'd sworn on their brother's grave to help find his family, who'd driven to Memphis and Chicago and Denver chasing false leads, who'd spent 4 years pretending to search while keeping James hidden like a secret that could destroy everything he'd built. Lucas stared at the photograph in his shaking hands. Sarah's hollow face across from Marcus's calculating smile. The diner booth somewhere in Chicago 3 weeks ago. Coffee cups between them like they were old friends discussing the weather instead of planning a 14-year-old's murder. The timestamp on the photo was recent. Too recent. This wasn't ancient history. This was active, ongoing betrayal. "How long have you known?" Lucas's voice came out strangled, barely recognizable as his own. "How long have you known Marcus killed your father?" That Marcus was one of the shooters? 2 weeks. James's voice was steady despite the machines tracking his failing body, despite the pain medication making his pupils dilate. "I found my mom in Chicago about 3 weeks ago. Took me 5 months to track her down through homeless networks. People talk, pass information. Someone mentioned a woman matching her description living in a shooting gallery on the south side. I went there expecting her to be dead already." Lucas moved closer, every word James spoke adding another piece to a puzzle that was destroying everything he'd believed about his life, his club, his brothers. She was barely coherent most days. Needle tracks up both arms. Weighed maybe 90 pounds. Didn't recognize me at first. James's jaw tightened with something that looked like grief and rage mixed together. But she had that photo hidden in her jacket, kept it close like it was worth something. During one of her rare lucid moments, she showed it to me. Started rambling about a man who'd been paying her for years to keep me away from Atlanta. Said he'd just given her $5,000 cash and an address written on a napkin. What address? He told her to bring me to Atlanta, to that specific address, that he needed to take care of loose ends before I became a problem. James's eyes held Lucas's. She didn't understand what that meant. Or maybe she did, and the drugs made her not care anymore. $5,000 buys a lot of heroin when you're an addict. Enough to kill yourself slowly over several months. Lucas wanted to scream, wanted to put his fist through the wall, wanted to storm into that parking lot and empty his gun into Marcus's skull in front of 700 witnesses. She brought you here to die. Your own mother. Sold me for drug money. James finished the sentence without emotion, like he'd accepted this truth long ago. I don't think she's been my mother for years. That woman died in New Orleans with my dad. What's left is just a ghost wearing her skin, choosing needles over everything else. The machines beeped steadily, filling the silence between them. Outside, morning had fully broken over Atlanta, sunlight streaming through the windows, painting everything gold like the world wasn't ending. I ran before we got to the address. James continued, his voice gaining strength. Took the napkin from her jacket while she was passed out. That's how I ended up behind the Waffle House. The address Marcus gave her was your clubhouse. 2 blocks away. I'd been watching it for 3 weeks. Jesus Christ. Lucas's mind raced through implications, through danger he hadn't seen coming. You were surveilling us. I was trying to understand who I was supposed to be delivered to. Who wanted me dead badly enough to pay my mother for years. James shifted in bed, wincing as stitches pulled. I watched your brothers come and go. Learned faces by studying them through binoculars I'd stolen from a pawn shop. Learned names by eavesdropping on conversations when members smoked outside. And then I saw him. Marcus. I recognized him immediately. For years changes a person, adds weight and age. But those eyes, James's voice dropped. You don't forget the eyes of a man who murdered your father. He has this cold look, like he's calculating cost and benefit of every action. He looked at my dad that same way before he shot him, like he was a problem being solved, not a brother being killed. Lucas felt sick. He'd worked alongside Marcus for 6 years before Ryan's death, for years after. 10 years total of trusting a man who'd executed his best friend. 10 years of sharing meals, planning runs, discussing club business. How many times had Marcus been alone with Jessica? With Olivia? How many opportunities had there been to finish what he'd started in that New Orleans warehouse? I watched Marcus for days. James's hands twisted the hospital sheet. Watched him eat dinner with you, laugh with your daughter, hug your wife. Watched him act like family while I knew he'd murdered mine. And I realized something you didn't know. None of you knew. He'd hidden it perfectly, played the loyal brother for 4 years while covering his tracks. Why didn't you come to me? Lucas demanded. Why not tell me what you knew? Because I was a homeless kid with a drug addict mother and no proof except my own memory from 4 years ago when I was 10. James's voice hardened. Who would believe me? Marcus is your VP. I'm nobody. A street rat. I needed evidence. Needed to be sure before I accused one of your brothers of fratricide. The logic was sound, and it made Lucas want to break something. This kid, Ryan's son, had been trying to protect the very people who should have been protecting him. The night Jessica called me, Lucas's throat tightened. The attack in the parking lot. You weren't just protecting strangers. I'd seen those 3 men meeting with Marcus 2 days before. James nodded slowly. Behind a warehouse near your clubhouse, late at night, when they thought no one was watching. I followed Marcus because I wanted proof, wanted to record their conversation on a phone I'd planned to steal. But I stayed too far back, couldn't hear clearly. Just saw them talking, saw Marcus hand them something. Money, maybe photos. Lucas's hands clenched into fists. The next day, I saw them again. Circling the Waffle House where you ate breakfast every Sunday. Studying exits, timing patterns. I realized they were planning something. James's voice shook. That night, I watched them arrive. Watched them park and wait. I thought they were waiting for me, that they'd finally figured out where I slept. But then your wife came out with your daughter, and they moved toward them instead. The image formed in Lucas's mind. James watching from the shadows, seeing Jessica and Olivia in danger, making a choice that would nearly kill him. I knew in that moment what Marcus had done. He'd told them to kill me, but they got the target wrong in the dark. Your wife, your daughter, they were never supposed to be there at midnight. Wrong place, wrong time. But those men had orders to kill a 14-year-old connected to your club, and they were following through. James's eyes filled with tears. I couldn't let them die because I was hiding. Couldn't be a coward twice. Lucas understood then. James hadn't saved strangers. He'd saved Jessica and Olivia from an attack meant for him, from killers Marcus had sent, from a betrayal that went deeper than any of them had imagined. Why did Marcus do it? Lucas asked, though part of him already knew. Why kill Ryan? Because my dad found out Marcus was stealing from the club. James's voice went flat, reciting facts. Not just skimming money, running his own deals using club connections. Guns, drugs, protection rackets. Using the Hells Angels name for personal profit while brothers took the risks. Dad had been investigating for months. Had evidence. Ledgers, recordings, photographs. Everything needed to bring Marcus down. Lucas remembered that night. Remembered Ryan's voice on the phone. Urgent, stressed, saying he'd found something that would change everything. Saying to come alone, to trust no one else. Dad was going to show you everything that night in New Orleans. Was going to give you proof so you could vote Marcus out, maybe turn him over to authorities. James's jaw tightened. Marcus found out somehow. Maybe he was tracking Dad's movements. Maybe he had someone watching. Either way, he couldn't let it happen. So he hired those 5 men, professionals, not gang members. Made it look like a rival hit. And spent 4 years playing the loyal brother while covering his tracks. The weight of it crushed Lucas's chest. Every memory with Marcus for 4 years was now suspect, tainted, possibly orchestrated. How many times had Marcus steered investigations away from certain leads? How many times had he offered to check out tips that went nowhere? He'd been helping Lucas search for James while simultaneously paying Sarah to keep him hidden. Lucas's phone buzzed. A text from his sergeant-at-arms. Marcus asking questions about the kid. Wants to see him. Says he deserves to meet Ryan's son. You want me to bring him up? The air left Lucas's lungs. Marcus was making his move. Right now? With 700 witnesses standing guard outside who had no idea one of their own was the wolf they should have been watching for. Lucas typed back carefully. Give me 10 minutes. Keep him downstairs. Make conversation. Tell him the doctors are running tests. The response came immediately. Copy that. He turned to James, his voice urgent. I need you to do something for me. Something dangerous. More dangerous than taking 3 knives for strangers? James's attempt at humor fell flat, but Lucas appreciated the effort. I need you to identify the other shooters from New Orleans. If Marcus was one of 5, and 2 died that night, that leaves 2 more. They might still be around. Might still be threats to you, to all of us. Lucas pulled out his phone, opening his photo gallery filled with pictures of every charter member across 5 states. Can you look through these? Tell me if you see any other faces from that warehouse. James took the phone with shaking hands, his monitor beeping faster with stress. He started scrolling through dozens of faces, bearded, scarred, tattooed, all wearing leather and patches. Lucas watched his expression change as he studied each photo, looking for ghosts in a sea of brotherhood. 3 minutes passed. 4. The silence broken only by machines and James's breathing. Then James stopped, his face going white as bone, his grip on the phone tightening until his knuckles stood out. Him. He turned the phone toward Lucas with a trembling hand. 3rd shooter. He was there. I'm absolutely certain. Lucas looked at the photo, and his heart stopped beating. It was Derek, his road captain, 10-year member, man he'd trusted to lead runs across 3 states. The man who'd volunteered to help search for James in Memphis 2 years ago. Who'd reported back that all leads were dead ends. Who'd been in Memphis at the exact time James was there with his mother. You're sure? I'd stake my life on it. He was the one who shot out the office lights. I remember because suddenly I couldn't see anything except muzzle flashes. James was shaking now. He laughed after my dad went down. Actually laughed. Lucas felt something dark and violent rising in his chest, threatening to consume him. Anyone else? Keep looking. James scrolled further, his breathing shallow. Stopped again, his face somehow going even whiter. Him too. 4th shooter. Tony. charter member for 8 years. Mechanic who worked on every bike in the club, who'd fixed Lucas's Harley dozens of times, who brought his kids to club barbecues, who'd hugged Lucas at Ryan's funeral and promised to help find his killers. He was the one standing guard at the door. James's voice barely worked. Watching for witnesses, making sure no one interrupted. He's the reason I stayed hidden. He was standing right next to my filing cabinet. I could have reached out and touched his boot. 3 men, 3 brothers, all of them wearing patches Lucas had approved, eating at his table, playing with his daughter, attending church with the club. 3 men who'd murdered Ryan and spent 4 years hiding among the very people who'd died to avenge him. Like this video and subscribe. Because what happens in the next 60 seconds will change everything. They're all here. Lucas's voice came out dead, hollow, empty of everything except cold fury. All 3 of them standing in that parking lot right now, pretending to mourn for Ryan's son while planning how to finish what they started 4 years ago. James's grip on the phone tightened until the screen cracked slightly under the pressure. What are you going to do? I'm going to give Marcus exactly what he wants. A meeting with you. Lucas's eyes were cold, calculating, running through scenarios. But first, I need to make calls. Get people in place I can trust. People who weren't in Atlanta 4 years ago, who couldn't have been part of this. People Marcus hasn't had time to corrupt. He stepped into the hallway, pulling out his burner phone to call charter members from Tennessee and South Carolina. Men Ryan had personally introduced him to years ago, men who'd bleed before they'd betray. The plan formed in his mind with crystal clarity, pieces falling into place. Marcus wanted James dead to bury the last witness. Lucas would give him the opportunity, but this time the trap would close on the right people. He made 6 calls in 5 minutes. Tennessee brothers were 2 hours out, already riding hard. South Carolina chapter could have 10 men here in 90 minutes. They'd come in through service entrances, wearing borrowed hospital security uniforms, taking positions near ICU exits and stairwells. Cameras would mysteriously malfunction for the next 2 hours. What happened next wouldn't exist on any recording. 45 minutes later, Lucas returned to James's room. The boy had been given more pain medication, was drifting in and out of consciousness, his body finally demanding rest after being stabbed, dying twice, and identifying his father's killers all in 12 hours. Lucas stood at the window, watching the parking lot where Marcus stood among brothers, his face carefully arranged in grief-stricken concern. Derek stood 10 feet away, talking to members from Birmingham. Tony near the bikes, wiping down chrome that didn't need cleaning. 3 killers hiding in plain sight among 700 loyal members. His phone buzzed. A text from his Tennessee contact. In position. South stairwell, service elevator, ICU nurses station. We have eyes on all exits. Say the word. Lucas took a breath, checked his weapon, a 9mm pressed against his spine, hidden under his vest. He moved to the corner of James's room, where shadows pooled thick, where he could see the door without being seen from the hallway. Positioned himself. Waited. His phone lit up. He texted his sergeant-at-arms. Send Marcus up. Room 347. Tell him James is awake and asking for him specifically. Wants to talk about Ryan. Let him come alone. The response came after a long pause. You sure about this, brother? Never been more sure of anything in my life. Lucas watched through the narrow window in the door as his sergeant-at-arms approached Marcus in the parking lot. Saw them talking. Saw Marcus's expression shift from concern to something else. Satisfaction, maybe anticipation. Marcus nodded, started toward the hospital entrance. Lucas's finger found his trigger guard. His breathing slowed. Every sense sharpened to razor focus. Footsteps in the hallway. Growing closer. Heavy boots on linoleum. A shadow passing other rooms. The door handle turned slowly, carefully, someone trying not to make noise that might wake a sleeping patient. Marcus entered carrying a pillow in his hands. Not flowers. Not a card. Not a stuffed animal or balloon. A pillow. Lucas's entire body went rigid. His finger moved to the trigger proper as Marcus approached James's bed, the pillow rising toward the sleeping boy's face, intentions crystal clear. Every muscle in Lucas's body coiled to move, to stop this, to end the man who'd killed his brother and was about to kill his brother's son. James's heart monitor flatlined. The alarm screamed. Marcus jumped back, dropping the pillow, his face cycling through genuine shock that looked too real to be acting. His hands raised instinctively, stepping away from the bed like he'd been caught, but hadn't done anything yet. But James's eyes were still closed. His chest wasn't moving. The monitor showed a flat line where a heartbeat should be, that terrible, endless tone that meant death. Marcus hadn't touched him yet, hadn't gotten close enough. Someone else had gotten there first. Lucas burst from the shadows, his gun drawn, as doctors rushed in from the hallway. As Marcus backed toward the door with his hands raised high, his face showing confusion that looked genuine. "Lucas, I swear, I just walked in, I didn't." Lucas's eyes went to the 4-line and saw it. A syringe port recently used, still wet with whatever had been injected. Someone had pushed something into James's line within the last 60 seconds, something that stopped his heart instantly. But Marcus had just arrived. Lucas had been watching the only door the entire time. And before Marcus entered, nobody else had come through, which meant there was another way into this room. Another entrance Lucas hadn't accounted for. Another person involved in this conspiracy. Someone the three of them hadn't identified. Someone who'd been watching, waiting, timing their move perfectly. As doctors worked frantically to revive James for the second time in 12 hours. Chest compressions, defibrillator charging, medications pushed through the same 4-line that had just been used to try killing him. Lucas's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Back away from Marcus. He's not working alone. The boy knows too much about more than just New Orleans. Let him die, or your daughter is next. You have 60 seconds to clear this room and let nature take its course." Lucas's blood turned to ice. Attached was a photo of Olivia asleep in her bed at home, taken minutes ago based on the timestamp, her nightlight glowing in the background. A gloved hand holding a hunting knife was visible in the frame's corner, inches from her throat. Lucas had 60 seconds to make an impossible choice. Let James die, or watch his daughter get murdered in her sleep 3 miles away. The photo on his phone showed Olivia's peaceful face, blonde hair spread across her pillow, completely unaware of the gloved hand holding a knife inches from her throat. The timestamp read 8:47 a.m., 2 minutes ago. His finger hovered over the call button. Jessica. He had to warn Jessica. Had to. Another text. Call anyone and she dies. Clear the room. Let the boy go. 45 seconds. Lucas's mind raced through impossible calculations. His Tennessee brothers were positioned throughout the hospital, but none were at his house. The nearest brother he could call was 12 minutes away. Olivia would be dead in 45 seconds. But if he cleared this room, James, Ryan's son, the boy who'd saved his family, would die on that table while doctors were forced out at gunpoint. Marcus was still backing toward the door, hands raised, genuine confusion on his face that Lucas couldn't read anymore. Was it real? Was Marcus truly surprised by James flatlining, or was this part of a larger plan Lucas couldn't see? The doctors worked frantically. Again, clear. The defibrillator discharged. James's small body arched off the bed. The monitor stayed flat. That endless tone of death. 30 seconds. Lucas made his decision. He typed back, "You want me to choose? I choose both. Come for my daughter and 700 bikers will burn your world down." He hit send and immediately called his sergeant-at-arms. "Get every brother to my house now. Someone's inside with Olivia. Kill them on sight." Then he turned his gun on Marcus. "On your knees. Now." "Lucas, I didn't." "Now." Lucas's roar brought his Tennessee brothers bursting through the door, weapons drawn, taking control of the room. They forced Marcus down, zip-tied his hands, while Lucas kept his gun trained on the man who'd killed Ryan. But his phone buzzed again. A video this time. Live feed. The gloved hand moving closer to Olivia's throat. A woman's voice, distorted. "You made the wrong choice." Lucas's heart stopped. He was going to watch his daughter die on a phone screen while the bedroom door in the video exploded inward. Jessica burst through with a baseball bat, swinging for the intruder's head. The phone camera spun wildly, catching glimpses, a woman's face, hollow and gaunt. Sarah, James's mother. The video cut off. Lucas couldn't breathe, couldn't think. His phone rang immediately. Jessica's number. He answered with shaking hands. She's okay. Jessica's voice came through breathless, shaking. Olivia's okay. The woman, Lucas, it was James's mother. She had a knife and a phone. I hit her. She's unconscious. Police are coming. The relief nearly dropped Lucas to his knees. You're sure Olivia's? She slept through the whole thing. She's fine. We're fine. Jessica's voice cracked. How did you know? I'll explain everything. Keep her there. Lock the doors. Don't let anyone in except brothers you recognize. He ended the call, his entire body shaking with adrenaline crash. Behind him, the defibrillator discharged again. We have a rhythm. He's back. Lucas spun around. James's monitor showed a heartbeat, weak, irregular, but beating. The boy's eyes fluttered open, confused and terrified, the breathing tube still down his throat making him gag. Easy, son. Easy. Dr. Patterson's hands were gentle, removing the tube. You're okay. You're safe. James's eyes found Lucas through the crowd of doctors, wide with questions. Lucas moved to his bedside, his hand finding James's. Your mother was here. She injected something into your something to stop your heart. But she's in custody now. She can't hurt you anymore. Tears streamed down James's face, but Lucas couldn't tell if they were from grief or relief or both. Probably both. Losing your mother, even one who'd betrayed you, left scars that never fully healed. Marcus was still on his knees, zip-tied, but his face had shifted from confusion to resignation. He looked at James, then at Lucas, and something broke behind his eyes. The kid really saw everything, didn't he? New Orleans. All 5 of us. Derek and Tony too. Lucas's voice was ice. We know everything. Ryan's evidence. The money you stole. The deals you ran using club colors. All of it. Ryan should have minded his own business. Marcus's voice held no remorse. He stuck his nose where it didn't belong. Made me choose between prison and survival. You chose murder. Lucas's finger tightened on the trigger. Everything in him screamed to end this now, to put a bullet in Marcus's skull for Ryan, for James, for 4 years of lies. But James's weak voice stopped him. Don't. Lucas looked at the boy, broken, dying, but somehow still choosing mercy over vengeance. Don't make yourself into what he is. James struggled to speak around the pain. My dad wouldn't want that. Wouldn't want you to destroy yourself for revenge. Like and subscribe if you believe some choices define who we are forever. Lucas's hand trembled. Every instinct screamed for blood. But Ryan's son, Ryan's better son, was asking him to be better than the violence that had taken his father. Slowly, Lucas lowered his weapon. Get them out of here. All 3 of them. Police are already on their way for Sarah. Add Marcus, Derek, and Tony to the list. His Tennessee brothers hauled Marcus to his feet, dragging him toward the door. As they passed, Marcus looked at James one last time. You should have stayed hidden, kid. Would have been easier for everyone. Easier isn't always right. James's voice was Ryan's voice, strong, principled, unbreakable even when broken. The next 48 hours blurred together. Police took statements. Federal investigators got involved. Turned out Marcus's operation was bigger than anyone knew, spreading across 5 states, involving gun trafficking and money laundering. Derek and Tony rolled on Marcus immediately, offering testimony in exchange for reduced sentences. Sarah was charged with attempted murder, child endangerment, and conspiracy. She'd been working with Marcus for years, taking payments to keep James hidden and drugged enough that his memories stayed buried. James's toxicology revealed she'd injected him with potassium chloride, enough to stop his heart in seconds. Only the doctor's quick response had saved him. 7 days after the attack, James was finally stable enough to leave ICU. Lucas arranged for a private room on a secure floor, with brothers standing guard 24/7. Jessica brought Olivia to visit, despite James's protest that he didn't want her to see him this way. Tubes and monitors and bruises that painted his skin purple and yellow. But Olivia didn't care about any of that. She marched straight to his bedside, her 6-year-old face serious, and took his hand. You saved me. You're my hero. James cried then. Deep, shaking sobs that he'd held back for 8 months on the streets, for 4 years since his father died, for his entire childhood spent surviving instead of living. Jessica held him from one side, Lucas from the other, and Olivia refused to let go of his hand. "You're coming home with us." Lucas's voice left no room for argument. "When you're healed, you're coming home. We've already filed for emergency custody. The state approved it this morning." James looked up, his face twisted with hope and fear. "I'm 14. I'm damaged. I've got medical bills that'll take decades to pay off. I've got trauma that'll need years of therapy. Why would you?" "Because you're Ryan's son." Lucas's voice broke. "Because you're a hero who had nothing but gave everything. Because my daughter loves you already. Because my wife thinks you're brave. Because 700 bikers stood vigil for you, and half of them are asking how they can help. Because you're family," Jessica added, her hand gentle on his shoulder. "Not by blood, by choice. And that's stronger." 6 weeks later, James walked out of Grady Memorial Hospital wearing new clothes bought by Jessica, leaning on crutches provided by the club, surrounded by an escort of 50 motorcycles that made Atlanta traffic stop and stare. The news crews were there. They'd been covering the story for weeks. "Homeless hero," the headlines called him. "Boy who saved biker family finds family of his own." Lucas helped him onto the back of his Harley. Carefully, mindful of healing wounds and damaged nerves that would take months more to fully recover. James wrapped his arms around Lucas's waist, and for the first time since his father died, felt safe. They rode to Ryan's grave first. The entire charter came, forming a wall of leather and respect around the headstone. Lucas helped James walk the final steps, both of them kneeling in grass that had grown over Ryan's resting place for 4 years. James placed his father's photo on the headstone, the one he'd carried through 8 months of homelessness, through 3 knife wounds, through dying twice. "I found him, Dad, just like you asked him to find me. We found each other." Lucas's arm wrapped around James's shoulders. "I found your son, brother, and he's everything you said he'd be. He's brave. He's strong. He's got your stubborn streak and your hero complex and your habit of saving people who don't deserve it." His voice cracked completely. "I'm going to keep him safe. I swear on everything I am. He's never going to be alone again." They stayed for an hour, talking to Ryan like he could hear them, telling him everything. About Marcus's arrest, about James's heroism, about the family they were building from the ashes of the one Marcus destroyed. Finally, they rode to Lucas's house. Their house now. James's new home. Jessica had spent 6 weeks preparing a room. Ryan's old photographs on the walls, a new bed, a desk for homework, everything a teenage boy needed to build a life instead of just surviving one. That night, James sat at their dinner table. His table, with Olivia chattering about her day at school, with Jessica asking what foods he liked so she could learn to cook them, with Lucas making terrible dad jokes that made everyone groan. It was ordinary. It was beautiful. It was everything he'd forgotten families could be. Later, Lucas found James standing at his bedroom window, staring out at the street where 2 brothers sat in a car, standing guard, making sure no threats could reach him. "You okay?" "I spent 8 months invisible." James's voice was quiet. "Nobody saw me. Nobody cared. I could have died behind that dumpster and the world would have kept spinning." He turned to Lucas, tears on his face. "Now I have 700 people who'd die for me. I have a family. I have a home. How did this happen? You chose courage over survival. You saved people who couldn't save themselves. And sometimes, not often, but sometimes, the world rewards that." Lucas pulled him into a hug. "Welcome home, son." James cried into Lucas's shoulder, finally letting go of 4 years of grief and 8 months of fear and 14 years of just trying to survive. And Lucas held Ryan's son, his son now, and made a promise to his brother's ghost that this time, he'd keep it forever.